I'd like to introduce a collaborator, a co-collaborator, Ann Beyer from the National Center for Appropriate Technology, who will talk a little about ATRA, and will be hosting the rest of the evening, and will be hosting our roundtable at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Maurice. And Ken, this is Ann Beyer from the National Center for Appropriate Technology. And I think that the last 3 years that we've spent working with Maurice and Todd Kelman and the team here at UC Davis has been a great learning experience, both for us to come to appreciate what broad statewide view the university has and the research that they're doing. And I think for them to come to appreciate the work that we've been doing with farmers and bringing farmer experience and farmer voices to this series of workshops. And even though this is the last of 5 in this particular series, we have about 4 more workshops that we're planning this spring to be out in the in-person workshops to visit farms and have farmer voices present there. So I'll be really brief now because I want to get to Karen and Sarah, but let me just briefly say that NCAT ATRA, so NCAT, National Center for Appropriate Technology, is the nonprofit organization working since 1976, serving farmers and ranchers and everyone who works with them to help with technical assistance, science-based yet practical and relevant to farmers. And we produce short publications on different topics, egg handling, processing, organic regulations. We have a number of things in Spanish. And I'd say that this can be the beginning of our conversation. The easiest way to get to the ATRA website is to type in attra.org or atra.org, attra.org. And you are welcome to email me anytime, annb@ncat.org. So that's ANNB@ncat.org. With that, I'll add in some more perspective at the end, but I want to get right to our speakers. And I'm thrilled to have 2 very capable, competent people here online. And you're gonna, great. And really appreciative of those who know how to use technology really well to make this work.
Learning.
So first will be Karen Giovannini. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You can correct. And so, of UC Extension. And she is the ombudsman in Sonoma County. And I'm really thrilled to be in contact and be able to call on her as a resource because she's tremendous. And as you'll see in the resources she's going to present, it's very helpful. Sarah Silva, very capable farmer, also up in the Sonoma area. And I called each one individually and then learned that they were working together. And I said, perfect. Okay, so you can tell us about the work you're doing together. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Karen, to start, and then we'll continue on. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So yes, I'm Karen Giovannini. I am with UC Cooperative Extension in Sonoma County. Our office, every county pretty much has a UC Cooperative Extension office, and they usually have the farm advisors. I'll share my screen with you. They have, in our office, we have dairy advisor, master gardener. We have the master gardener program, which all the offices have master gardener programs. We have the 4-H program. So just want to give you a little bit of background. That's what the UC Cooperative Extension is there for, to work with the farmers and bring information, science-based information to you. So check out your local, your county's UC Cooperative Extension, see what they can do for you. So I also have a website, Agriculture Ombudsman. I'm sure if you Google Agriculture Ombudsman, it'll come up. UC Cooperative Extension, Ag Ombudsman, it'll come up. So what I created was a bunch of fact sheets because when I started doing this job 5 or 6 years ago, however long it's been, it was so much information that I was learning about the different regulations that I thought, hey, I need to have this somewhere, and why not make it so that other people can use it as well? So I have fact sheets about different topics that come up most often. So tonight we're going to be talking about eggs and poultry, and since we don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but I'll start with the egg. So this is the eggs fact sheet, and it has resources on the side, and then just direct marketing basics. So I'm just going to jump into it. If you want to sell eggs in California, it doesn't matter how large or small your operation is, you have to obtain an egg handler's registration. There's a link to it right on this page. It is through the CDFA, the California Department of Food and Agriculture. You register with them. A first-time application is $75, and the annual renewal is $50. So then, with that, you have a lot of responsibilities. And the reason that there is the egg handler's registration is to protect the egg industry of California, to make sure that the eggs that are being sold are of a certain quality and certain standards. So, and those standards are, you have to grade, you have to say what your grading is. Most eggs, I would think, are AA. So you need to do this whole bit about labeling. So, and Sarah's actually got a good resource for cartons that have some of this standard language on them. But you have to do, on the labels, you have to include the IRQ, which is your identity, the responsibility, which is the farm name or whatever. Identity is eggs, so identity is a product. Responsibility is where the eggs are coming from. And then the quantity, which is the number of eggs in the container. And this also goes for if you were to sell the eggs in bulk, but I think most people sell them in cartons. So at any rate, there's a sell by date, which is not to exceed 30 days from the date which the eggs were packed. And then there's a Julian date of pack, which is the 1 through 365 days of the year. So, and there are, like this link here, this Julian date is a link to something that will help you figure out what the Julian date is, so you don't have to sit there and put numbers on your calendar. So everybody that has an egg handler's registration has a plant identification number, your grading, your size, there's egg size and grading standards. And then you have to have the statement refrigerate after purchase. And then there's also the requirements about the CASEFS compliant, which is the, that has to do with the size of the battery cages. And I'm assuming that most people are probably pasture, so they don't have to worry about that, but you are automatically CASEFS compliant. But it has to be the right font size, 1/4 inch. And then if you want to make any claims such as organic, then your operation has to be registered organic with California Department of Food and Agriculture. If you have gross sales over $5,000 worth of organic produce and eggs, whatever, then you also have to be certified. And certification is through a third party. So, but if you do want to say that your eggs are organic and you're just registered, you cannot use the USDA organic seal. That's only for certified organic, just so you're aware. But you can say that they're organic if you're registered organic. So sometimes I get questions about the temperature requirements because not everybody puts their eggs, or not everybody has their eggs at farmers market and are refrigerated. They might bring them refrigerated, but they set them out. That's fine. There are some requirements about, if the eggs are held displayed at a temperature of, they have to be displayed at a temperature of 90 degrees or below. that's basically it with the eggs. I don't know if they're, Anne, did you want me to cover anything else on it, or I'll just go into the meat? Okay.
Right. Our CDFA specialist will cover a little more on eggs. So I think
Right.
it's a good, and she'll clarify a few extra things and the conditions under which those eggs can not be, there is a list of conditions under which they would be okay not to refrigerate them. Yeah, let's move forward with the eggs, because I think we could actually ask people to reply, put in their chat box if you have specific questions about poultry. But I find that one of the most confusing things to people is the federal exemption, the state exemption.
Right, when it comes to
what you're gonna,
processing.
those 4 different ways that you can legally sell poultry meat. So I'll let you take that away.
Okay. Okay, so for those who want to process on their farm and sell the meat, that's what this page is for. So yeah, like Anne mentioned, there are different ways you can sell poultry meat. So the cleanest way, or and I don't mean clean as in sanitary, I just mean like the most, that covers everything, is having your chickens USDA processed, because then you can sell the meat anywhere, to restaurants or whomever. So if there is a USDA plant nearby and it's convenient for you, then that is a good way to go. But no, that's not the case for a lot of people, and also a lot of those plants have minimum numbers, and they're usually quite large. So except for American in Sacramento, but at any rate. So on this page, I have an overview of USDA exempt processing. So I don't want it to get too confusing, but obviously you can come to this page and reread it and get the information, you know, and digest it a little easier. I try to put it into plain English, but it is regulations, and regulations are confusing and don't lend themselves well to the English language so at any rate, first of all, poultry and rabbits in California, poultry and rabbits are considered the same. So what I'm going to talk about will go for rabbits as well as poultry. And poultry is turkeys, chickens, duck, geese, squab, guinea fowl, ratites, and small game birds, quail, partridge, etc. So that's what poultry includes. So I'm not just talking about chickens. I mean, I know this is about chickens, but it goes for all those other feathered friends as well. So so there are, yes, different ways of doing it. The 2 ways I'm going to talk about. So there's USDA exempt. So the USDA decided quite a few years ago that small-scale poultry farmers should have a way to harvest on their property and be able to sell the meat. So it's called USDA exempt. There's a big long name for it, but it's commonly known as USDA exempt. And then each state can adopt it however they want. So California Department of Food and Agriculture added some caveats to it. So you could look at the USDA guide and be like, all right, I can sell to restaurants and grocery stores. It's gonna be great, but not so fast, says CDFA. So CDFA put some rules around it. So there are different ways of being an exempt facility. So you can do USDA exempt and CDFA exempt, because CDFA has their CDFA exempt, and then they have CDFA license, okay? So CDFA exempt is it's for a small amount, and you're allowed to process the poultry on your farm If you do up to 1,000, you can do it without any paperwork with CDFA. So you can process the poultry on your farm and do it under the guideline, which, you know, you do have to do food safety, and, you know, it's a clean product. You do have to, exempt doesn't mean it's exempt from food safety. It just means it's exempt from inspector, USDA inspector being on site while you're doing it. So you're still held to the same standards. So if you're doing up to 1,000 birds, you can do this without registering with CDFA. If you're going to do over a year, if you're going to do over 1,000 birds a year, then you do need to register with CDFA. And it's just a paper saying, I mean, you're just going to describe what you're doing. You do need to have a treatment plan for the offal. So you either have to get it to a rendering company, or you can correctly compost it on site. Poultry, not rabbits, can be, that is okay to compost, but you need to do it correctly. And there are many ways to do it correctly. I'm just saying you got to do it correctly. So you need to register. You need to have a registration with the Water Quality Control Board. So that's going to be probably a that can be. I mean, they do have. The water boards do have some waivers for small scale operations. So I would hope that yours would meet that qualification, but every water board is different. There's, I forget how many within the state, and we have 2 in our county. So that it's geographically determined. And, you know, you have to have the proper labeling. So, and there's a table below that has the labeling information. So then if you want to become a CDFA licensed facility, say you want to be able to sell to restaurants, then you would need to become a licensed facility. And that's going to be an even higher bar. So that's just below USDA levels. So, and again, your maximum that you can do in 1 year is 20,000 poultry. And there is no exemption, or there is no limit for rabbits, because USDA doesn't recognize rabbits. So they consider them exotic. So at any rate, you have to get the license. You need to become a poultry meat inspector. So in that case, you take classes from CDFA, and they will train you about the rules and maybe some food, food safety, but not like how to actually do the processing. So at any rate, you have to have a sanitation standard of operating procedure, and the cost of the permit is, or the application and the license is not that much relative to our county's permitting, for example. So, and then there's different types of exemptions, different types of business operations. So there's the producer grower, you raise, slaughter, and process your own chickens. There's the producer grower, other person, where you purchase live birds that are owned by somebody else, and then you slaughter and process those birds. Plus you can raise your own. And then there's the small enterprise, and you can purchase live poultry from others. And that one's the most flexible. It will allow you to sell to others, to restaurants and stuff. So okay, so going into the tables, the first table is label requirements for the exempt processed poultry. So this top part applies to whatever business operation you're doing then that's the labeling requirements for you. And then if you're CDFA licensed, you also have your mark of inspection for a CDFA license. If you are, okay, so table 2, this is the limitations of where you can sell. If you are, so this is where you're going to find that you want to become CDFA licensed, unless you're just going to sell directly to consumer. Because if you're USDA exempt, CDFA exempt, you're basically allowed to only sell direct to consumer. That's it. So your limitations are 20,000. There is a producer grower under 1,000. That's the one where you don't have to register. But other than that, you are required to sell whole chickens to direct to consumer. If you're CDFA licensed, then depending on what your business operation is, then you could also sell to retail stores, you can sell to distributors, you can sell to hotels, restaurants, boarding houses, etc. So, so it is more flexible, but it is a higher bar to clear. So, and that's basically it. And on this page too, the Marin County did some work with their water board, and so they have some information about sanitation, mobile processing, and on-farm processing in Marin County that can be used as, they have their best management practices. These can be used as best management practices across the state. It's, so that's why I included it here, but it's up to your county. And I didn't talk about your county, but your county will undoubtedly want to be involved in what you're doing, want to know what you're doing. So in our county, for example, if you wanted to have if you want to do poultry processing on your farm and have a permanent structure to do it, you would have to obtain a use permit, and a use permit in our county would cost you a lot. Like at least $15,000 for something like that, probably way more by the time you get done with everything. If you wanted to do a mobile processing unit, we are working with our county to figure out a way to do that to be more reasonable in the permit costs. But just know that your county is going to want to be involved because, and I'm saying your county's planning department, because the planning department is responsible for maintaining the resources of your county. And so when you're using land, or you might have wastewater going onto your land or whatever, that's something that they want to know is being done in a way that's not going to ruin or get into places where it shouldn't. So just know that you should talk with your county planning department to make sure that your zoning allows for this and to find out what the requirements are for your county.